Parshas Korach deals with the famous rebellion of Korach and his congregation, his Ada. And in fact, there's a famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which is the ethics of our fathers, which is the custom to learn between Pesach and Shavuot, and some also have the minhag to continuing throughout the summer months learning Pirkei Avos. There's a famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Perek Hey, Mishnah Yud Zayin. It says as follows: Kol machlokes hi l'shem shamayim, any dispute which is for the sake of heaven, sofa l'hiskayim, the end result is it will remain, it will be fulfilled. V'she'ena l'shem shamayim ein sofa l'hiskayim, any dispute which is not l'shem shamayim is not going to last. So the Mishnah asks the obvious question: what is the classical when we refer to a dispute for the sake of heaven? What is that machlokas? So the Mishnah tells us the machlokas Hillel v'Shammai. We know the great rabbis in the Talmud, Hillel and Shammai, had many different disagreements, and even though today we paskin like Beis Hillel, usually we follow the opinion of Beis Hillel, but as the Gemara tells us, Elu v'Elu divrei Elokim chayim. These and these are the words of God. They're both true. Shammai was giving his opinion what God's kavanah was, and so was Hillel. They both had kavanah l'shem shamayim. As they say in the Svarim HaKadoshim, in the Sifrei Kabbalah, that even though we pass in like Hillel now, but we're going to pass in like Beis Shammai later, because Beis Shammai is din, and we're not ready for Beis Shammai. Like we have in the beginning of Bereshis, it says Bereshis bar Elokim. It begins with Elokim and then ends off with Hashem. And we know our rabbis tell us the difference between God's name of Elokim and Hashem is Elokim is referring to Midas Hadin, strict judgment, and Hashem is Midas Harachamim. So God originally wanted to create the world with Midas Hadin, but he realized that it would be too much, so we combined din with Rachamim. And therefore, in the Sifrei Kabbalah, we have no source in Halacha, but some claim that we're still going to follow Beis Shammai once the Mashiach comes. But either way, the Mishnah tells us the classical dispute for the sake of heaven, without having their own personal interest, that's the machlokes Beis Hillel that's the machlokes Hillel and Shammai. And it says, so what is the classical machlokes then between that the Mishnah says is a machlokes lo l'shem shamayim? Which one would that be? What would you say? It says, in the Mishnah it says, Hillel and Shammai is the machlokas l'shem shamayim. That's the classical example. What would be the classical example of the machlokas which isn't l'shem shamayim? What would you say? I'll give you a hint. That's something to do with our parsha. So the Mishnah says, this is the dispute between Korach and his Ada and his congregation. So that's what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says, what is it, the dispute l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven? That's Hillel and Shammai. When they fight over what's the pshat, they want to know the emes. They're interested in the truth. They're not interested in their own ego, their own kavod. And what is the opposite? Which is the dispute that they're not interested for the sake of the truth? They all have their own personal motives. That's the machlokas Korach v'Adaso. There's an obvious question the Mefarshim ask. The Malbim discusses it, others. The Noam Elimelech asks the obvious question. He says the Mishnah should say Machlokas Korach v'Adaso im Moshe. In other words, at first glance, Korach and his aid are on the same side, going against Moshe. If you're having an equivalent, this is like it said L'Shem Shamayim Machlokas Hillel v'Shamai, or should it say Machlokas Korach v'Moshe? Why is the Mishnah write Korach v'Chol Adaso? So you have the question. I should have just said, this say, which should be consistent. The dispute for the sake of heaven is Hillel and Shammai. And should have said the dispute not for the sake of heaven is Moshe and Korach. Instead it doesn't even mention Moshe. It just says it's the Machlokas Moshe and Korach. So the others also give answers. Ba'akol from the Noam Elimelech. He writes as follows. How do you know? We see Kama Bali Machlokas Omdin al Sadiqim. We see many people claiming that they're L'Shem Shamayim. Many people claim the Machlokas is L'Shem Shamayim. And no one says no one claims their argument. Everyone says that. So the example they give here is that Hillel and Shammai, they were fighting L'Shem Shamayim, and they wanted the emes. But Korach and Ada, they were fighting among themselves. In other words, a lot of times you can have the different levels of togetherness. Some good, some not so good. There's a very low level, like we had in the Dor Haflaga, when the tower above it, they just wanted to get together and fight against God, etc. It was a very superficial togetherness, like we find among the enemies of Israel. They have a common enemy. They might have their own interest, but when you have someone who basically you share this, you share the same interest, you like the person. Hillel and Shammai loved each other. They just argued over certain points. But by Korach and Ada, they were fighting among themselves. Because why? Because you're not arguing L'Shem Shamayim. I want this, you want that. We might want a similar result, but our motivations are very different. So that's what the Mishnah is telling me. So by Shammai and Hillel, it was a common bond. The motivation was emes, the truth. But by Korach and Ada, it was far from it. In fact, that's what they explain. That Rashi tells us in the beginning of the parasha, V'yikach Korach ben Yisar ben Kas ben Levi. So, who was Levi's father? It goes through the descendants, the yichus of Korach, and it ends ben Levi. Who was Levi's father? Yaakov Avinu. So why did they mention Yaakov's name? Why was Yaakov left off? It should have said Ben Kas, Ben Levi, Ben Yaakov. Why does it stop at Ben Levi? So Rashi writes, Shebikesh Yaakov Rachamim al Atzmo. Yaakov wanted mercy on himself. Shol Yiskar Shmo al Machlokos. His name shouldn't be mentioned in the Machlokas between Korach and the Ada. The question is, he only wanted his name not mentioned, but his kids he didn't care. Why not pray that his kids not mentioned? So the answer is we know, because Yaakov represents emes. And the Machlokas of Korach v'Adaso was the opposite of emes. He didn't pray there should be no emes in the Machlokas, because at any time, even if there's a shemetz, a little bit of truth, then it could be lasting, it could be kayam. His fame, Yaakov, which represents emes, he wanted to make sure there was no emes in the machlokas between Korach and Adaso. And that's what they point out. Similarly, we mentioned in last week's parsha, it says, Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. And we know he changed his name from Hoshea to Yehoshua. So he called Moshe Loshea Ben Nun, he called him Yoshua. So Rashi writes, why did his follow love? He prayed for Yoshua, you should be saved from the advice of the Meraglim. So the question is, V'tzicham Lahavin, Lama hispala Moshe rak al Yoshua, v'lo al Shah Meraglim u'prad al Kolev. And so why was Moshe only praying for Yoshua, that don't get involved with the bad things in the Meraglim? Why didn't he give a prayer for Kolev as well? So the Kehilas Yaakov explains, there are two types of Averas, two types of sins. Shnei Sugei Averos. One is Averas Pshutos, Sha'osan Yodea D'Averahu Osa. There's the one level where if you ask the person, what are you doing? Are you doing anything wrong now? Yeah, I'm doing an Avera. I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. What can I do? I'm overcome with temptation, type, or whatever the case may be, and I'm doing it. But what is it? It's an obvious sin. The person knows he's doing something wrong, but it's a moment of weakness. They feel they can't control themselves. That's one type of sin, right? However, there's a second level, Averish Yetzirah Malbish Osan B'mitzvah. That one that the Yetzirah, our Yetzirah, makes us rationalize. Not only are we doing an Avera, but we're doing a mitzvah. Ela va'osa osan choshev shu makayim mitzvah b'asiyasan. And like the ones we rationalize, that not only, as there's a famous saying in the Gemara, the first time you do an Avera, you feel bad, you feel a little guilt, remorse. The second time, Nasa keheter, it becomes like it's permitted. It becomes mutter, permitted. And the Bali Musa like to add, and the third time it becomes a mitzvah. You rationalize it so much that you have to deal with yourself, so it becomes a mitzvah. So the Kilos Yitzchak points out that this second type of Avera, Kashos, is much more dangerous than the first one. Why is it much more dangerous? Ki ein tikva sheyaset tshuva alehem. Because on the second Avera, you're not going to do tshuva on, because what's there to do tshuva on? You're doing a mitzvah. Like the Zohar writes by the Meraglim, when they brought an evil report on Eretz Yisrael, because they thought, Kishayavo Eretz Yisrael, Yimna Moshe, to see him that Moshe was going to put new leaders into Klal Yisrael, and therefore they wanted to keep their leadership. They were Nogea B'dav, and therefore they couldn't see further. In other words, they say over, I think, in the name of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the original, they asked them a question once, and again, it's not relevant to the Zionists today, but the original Zionists, way back. So he was asked, how come when you talk about the original Zionists, you have very harsh words for them, but when you talk about the non-observant, irreligious Russian Jews, you don't talk the same way? Somebody asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe that in a different context. So he said, I'll tell you why. He said, because if you ask the original Zionists, don't confuse them with the religious Zionists today, and those are people who stuffed up mikvos, closed up yeshivas, everything. So these people, if you ask them, are you religious? Of course I'm religious. I'm building up the land of Israel. That's the most important mitzvah. That's it. Oh, those people are learning, davening, doing it, they're wasting their time. That would be the opinion of the original Zionists. But if you ask the non-observant Russian Jew who came over, and he said, are you religious? No, I'm not religious. I don't believe in that stuff. Your father religious? No, he didn't believe in it either. So who's religious? My grandfather. Why is he religious? Because he kept Shabbos. I remember sitting on his lap. He used to make Kiddush Friday night. He's a religious Jew. So Lubavitcher, he said, in this example, the original Zionist is much worse off. The one who's the one is doing a sin, but they're couching it in a mitzvah. So then, what's there to do tshuva on? I'm doing everything right, I don't have to change. But the Russian Jew, he knows he's doing wrong, so maybe one time a Yom Kippur will come along, an Elul, and maybe down the line he might do tshuva. So that's what he's saying here. There are two types of averis a person can do. A person does as a sin which is obvious. He asks, what am I doing? I feel overwhelmed, it's too much for me. That's it, I can't control myself, but I know I'm doing something wrong. But the second one is much worse, is because you turn the Aveira into the mitzvah. As we said, the first time you feel bad, you feel a little guilt. The second time it's nasek heter, it becomes permitted. As the Bali Musa say, the third time it becomes a mitzvah already. When you start doing something all the time, in fact, there's a major discussion among the Achronim, what's worse? Or, well, I don't know what's worse, but what's a worse Aveira? An Aveira that someone does all the time, or an Aveira that someone doesn't do, or someone does once in a while. So there's a discussion on it, but some say, in this angle, that the one, if you do the same Aveira all the time, some thinks it's worse because Naseh Keheter. In other words, it's like you think it's okay, it becomes a mitzvah. The other school of thought says no, it's like under duress, you feel you can't control yourself on this one, and it's not as bad. That's a discussion among the Bali Musa. So therefore the Kilas Yitzchak explains as follows. He says, Isa b'medrash hamaragim hayu b'nei adam gedolim v'tzadikim. The spies were great people. They weren't like us. They were big gedolei during the time of the Torah. And when Moshe sent them to the land to spy out the land, they were the leaders. They were the head of the tribes. Why would Moshe even entertain the possibility that they would give an evil report? Why would Moshe have to feel he has to protect them from anything? It should be category number one. It's obvious that talking evil about the land of Israel is a bad thing, and these are great people, so why was there was no need for Moshe to pray on their behalf. I guess he underestimated the ability of someone being Nogeya B'davar. When you're Nogeya, when you have a personal bias, as they say, the Torah tells us, bribe blinds a person. And people don't know what a bribe is. People think a bribe is you give the judge $10,000 and say, make sure I win. That's not a bribe. That's straight out Geneva, Gezela. You're just stealing from the other guy. The bribe is you give the judge, you know what, I really been studying your history, I really like the way you pass in your cases, and don't let this affect the, you're going to be sitting on my, tomorrow, don't let this affect our case at all, but just take these $10,000, you can do whatever you want with it. That's a bribe. Because, and it says a bribe blinds a person, and when you're blind, it doesn't help to look any closer. You're a Nogeya B'davar, so therefore you can't see straight anymore. So even though they were great people, but the problem with the Meragla, they were Nogeya B'davar. Because why were they Nogeya B'davar? Because the Zohar writes, because they realized that when they go into Eretz Yisrael, they're no longer going to be the leaders anymore. There's going to be a different type of anhaga. So therefore, was deep in their minds, whatever, subconsciously, they didn't want to give up the leadership position when they moved into Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, V'tokach Yishar Moshe, but that's the other Meraglim. But however, Yoshua, but therefore, Moshe didn't think he had to worry about that. It was obvious Havera on that point. He wasn't concerned. So why did he pray for Yoshua? Why was Yoshua singled out? But Yoshua had another issue, because we know at the end of last week's parasha, 2 weeks ago, Eldon and Medad, Yoshua knew that Moshe Mace and Yoshua is going to take the Jewish people into Israel. So therefore, and Yoshua got very upset. Adodi Moshe, kill, are you kidding me? He didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to die. He realized that, so Yoshua, he realized that a good reason, he's going to try to mess up the mission. He realized once the Jews enter Eretz Yisrael, Moshe is over. So Yoshua he could make a cheshbon, a good machshir. You know what? We're better off having Moshe not entering Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, that's why Moshe prayed for Yoshua Because Yoshua had a good reason to make up, in his mind he had a good reason to make up a lie, and therefore he prayed for Yoshua. And therefore that's what it says, Hoshea ben Nun to Yoshua ben Nun. And therefore, that's why he prayed on Yoshua. But they say, what about Kalev? They say, because, Lo Yasser Sheva mi Yehuda, Kalev, it was a win-win situation. Because we know that he knew the Torah tells us there's going to be Malchus, so he thought he'd be the one to take over anyway. Was he from Yehuda? Was he from Yehuda? That's what they say. Well, Yasser Sheva mi Yehuda, and therefore, he didn't need a prayer because he wasn't Nogay at all, because he's a leader in the Midbar, he'd be a leader afterwards. So that's why the other so you'll call him, we don't have to pray for because win-win. The other Meraglim, they're great people. I don't have to worry about them making up. So why would I think, but he undermesses in Nogay Nagia. But Yoshua, he had a good reason to lie. He wanted Moshe to stay around, Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore Moshe prayed, so I have to save you from the outside, so that's why from Yoshua to Yoshua. That's why, so that's what they explain here, but the Machlokas, so therefore Yoshua was L'Shem Shamayim, or he thought he would be L'Shem Shamayim, in order to pray that they won't go into Israel, Moshe will be around. So to here, the Machlokas of Shammai and Hillel, that's the Machlokas L'Shem Shamayim, the Machlokas of Korach, Vadaso, that's the Machlokas Shelo L'Shem Shamayim.